This video is a critique of Extinction Rebellion, and it is not just based on reading the information on their website. It is not just based on watching the YouTube videos on their YouTube channel. It is not just based on attending a lecture delivered by their leader and main spokesperson. I actually got to talk to the guy, even though it was via Skype. They took questions from the audience. I got up. I stated my question. I heard his answer. So, in some small measure, I got to interview or cross-examine the leader of this organization. And let me tell you something. Even though this video is a critique of Extinction Rebellion, it's going to give you a much more positive impression of this absolutely awful social movement than if you went and took a look at the propaganda materials they're producing for themselves.
My name is Skeena Rathore, and I'm the Vision Team Coordinator for Extinction Rebellion. And I have sat many times between Roger and Gail, and this is why, perhaps, I'm here talking to you to introduce part of the debrief, which was very special for a great number of people. Extinction Rebellion is about moral leadership, and it's about moral impeccability. It's about truth-telling. When we show our leadership, and we stand with others in that leadership, how do we navigate so that we hold each other in our most exquisite leadership? There's a moment where Gail speaks about someone in our movement, Ronan, describing them as the sun and the moon. And in that moment, in that narrative, which I think some people have heard a few times, the rest of us can wonder who we are. And I think that's why I'm so happy to be able to speak to you, because I want to say to people that are watching this that we are co-leaders, and that if there is a sun and a moon, then you are the stars in the sky.
We came together to basically recreate what it means to be an activist on the basis of the social science and on the basis of spiritualism, various sort of inputs. And there's a certain brutality in that, because we went out into the public sphere and said, if you don't like it, then start your own social movement.
And we're holding all of this together. There's a co-leadership, and there is leadership causing leadership.
How could I possibly indict them? How could I possibly make them look more ridiculous, more terrible than this kind of material they're producing for themselves? They openly talk about themselves being a spiritual movement. They wear this medallion that makes them look like a cult. Their main claim to fame, the main thing they are proud of, is that they've gotten more than 1,000 people arrested. So as of April 22nd, 2019, more than 1,000 people have been arrested in the United Kingdom, basically in England, at their protests. All the red flags are here. And if you actually read the text on their website carefully, it's going to give you a very, very negative impression of the organization. Now, the first thing I said to him when I asked my question was, thank you for your lecture. By the way, this is somewhere on the internet. It was multiple people filmed me talking to this guy, and I'm sure it's been uploaded to multiple YouTube channels. But the first thing I said to him was, look, the presentation you just gave, perhaps because you're addressing your comments to an audience of people, all of whom want to make the world a better place, all of whom want to solve these problems, the presentation you just gave me a much better impression than anything I read on your website or anything I saw on your YouTube channel. Listening to the same guy give lectures on his YouTube channel gave me an absolutely terrible impression of this organization, what it's about, and made me feel that I was very much their enemy. And I should mention the other thing that's in framing this discourse for many people, and was the final question you had to face, is the extent to which Extinction Rebellion is un-vegan, anti-vegan, or not vegan enough. I actually felt he handled that question reasonably well. It's certainly not the most outstanding problem with this social movement. Once in a while, there's like a little piece of rhetoric that seems to take on a life of its own. It seems to overpower the minds of the people presenting that rhetoric. It's like a runaway freight train. It's like the train is more powerful than the tracks it's going on. Or it's like the tool becomes more powerful than the purpose the tool was meant to be put to. And the results are pathetic and dangerous. Like, there's been this idea bouncing around the vegan demimonde for maybe 20 years that, the future is social science research. The future is moving away from methods of protest that are just based on, like, passion or opinion or creativity or the arts or, I don't know, or politics or, politics. Politics and science, those are two separate things. No. Now we're gonna wipe the chalkboard clean and we're gonna start again with the findings of social science research. So, this rhetoric has gotten old, people. I mean, if anyone found it convincing, say as recently as 2015, when Direct Action Everywhere were really taking that seriously, by now it's like an old pair of socks that have holes worn through it. I think most people, even if they're not really doing any independent research, they've started to guess that this is kind of a snake oil salesman. You're kind of suspicious. Okay, you're going to tell me about slavery and Mahatma Gandhi and how social science research has proven that your method is effective, not what People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals is doing, not what Greenpeace is doing, not what the government is doing. You alone have come to the correct conclusions from your examination of social science research. And yet somehow each of the organizations, each of the cult groups, frankly, that makes this claim, they come to completely different conclusions. Well, gee, it's kind of like, back in the Dark Ages, it seems like every version of Christianity and every version of Islam, they were really certain they'd studied the sacred texts and come to the correct conclusions. And they were willing to kill the followers of all the other forms of Christianity, all the other forms of Islam. They were certain that their views were backed up by the Bible, or in Islam's case, backed up by the Quran. And yet, mysteriously, it seems like, these are not really scientific conclusions they came to. So when I got in the microphone, I guess last things first here, I said to him in the most polite way possible, after thanking him for his presentation, after telling him that his presentation gave me a much, much more positive view of his organization than the organization's own propaganda did, I said, well, it does seem to me that when you make these claims about social science research and about what's effective, there is some cherry picking involved here. The method you have put forward for this new movement, Extinction Rebellion, abbreviated as XR, the method you put forward, it's identical to what's happening right now in Hong Kong. The method is exactly the same. Hong Kong protests, they shut down the highways, they shut down major roads, they shut down the airport. It's exactly his form of mass occupy, non-violent, but just barely non-violent protest. And I said, you know what? If I were a gambling man, I'd tell you that in Hong Kong, it's not going to work. They're protesting for democracy, and democracy is not what they're going to get. It's not going to be that easy. They're facing off against China's Red Army, and they're going to lose. And, I know a lot of other examples that people don't like to discuss and don't get included. Cambodia comes to mind. But, there are so many all around the world. And, of course, there are so many nobody's talking about here. Like, gee, you want to talk about the abolition of slavery? Why doesn't China count? Did you know China has its own history of the abolition of slavery? Oh, you didn't know that. Oh, so you didn't actually read any books or do any social science research. Sorry. Your version of the history of the abolition of slavery, it's the product of your ideology going back and picking and choosing things from history that reinforces your biases, what you want Oh, my God. Sorry. China, look, I also think the history of slavery in Haiti is very important. But admittedly, Haiti is one small island in the Caribbean. We can learn a lot from studying the history of how slavery got abolished in slavery. You can learn a lot. It'll give you nightmares, people. It's real violent. It's real gory. It's really fascinating. But, admittedly, Haiti is, after all, one small island in the Caribbean. China was a pretty big part of planet Earth's inhabited landmass. Still is. But, if we're talking about the history of the abolition of slavery, could it be that this is, Eurocentric? Could it be that you're taking a really simple stereotype notion of what happened in the United States and you're just ignoring, like, the Civil War? You're constructing this story about nonviolent protest and disruption and ignoring, the fact that there was actually a civil war that was involved in the abolition of slavery. Could it be that you're choosing someone like Martin Luther King Jr.? You're saying Martin Luther King Jr. is a hero, but you're ignoring how he died? You're ignoring that the things you say he accomplished were actually accomplished by Lyndon Johnson after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Like, there are some huge gaps in these narratives you're presenting about social science research and learning the lessons of history. It sounds like instead you just have an ideology the same way the communists did in the past, and then you're trying to vindicate that ideology through the very selected, very biased reading of history. And the Christians did that before too. Oh man, the Christians could interpret history to back up all their fantasies about what society was and what it should be. So anyway, look. When I got up on the microphone to talk to this guy, leader and communications director for Extinction Rebellion, what I said to him was, well, you look at Hong Kong, which seems to be exactly your method. You look at Cambodia, and there are a lot of other examples people aren't thinking about here and that aren't included in these generalizations. And you know what? I really just don't feel that there's like some kind of self-evident empirical fact here that your methods are backed up by social science research. I said it in the nicest way possible. It was a lot nicer there than I'm being in this video. And you know what he said back to me? He said, well, you're right. Like, at least 44% of the time, these methods don't work. He said it's close to 50-50. But it's at least like 44% of the time he concedes 40% of that doesn't work. And yeah, you know what? Like Hong Kong and Cambodia, yeah, probably not. Okay, so your whole claim to fame is you got 1,000 people arrested and went to prison in England, right? Okay, so this says 1,065 people have been arrested. Obviously, in England, the authorities are probably going to be very kind to these people. Probably not very many of them are going to really do hard time in prison, because the British authorities will probably say, well, he had good intentions. They'll probably be sympathetic. But nevertheless, you let's just say hypothetically you sent 1,000 people to jail. And maybe they spent only one night in jail, but still they now have a criminal record. They got to get a lawyer and deal with it. And you're telling me you completely accept there's at least a 44% chance that this is for nothing. Well, that's a contrast from the ultra-confident, over-the-top rhetoric you've been presenting, even in this same lecture, in this same presentation you gave to all the people in this audience today here in Toronto. Okay, look, guys, I took a lot of notes during this lecture. I listened to what he had to say. I listened to it from his perspective. Civil disobedience, Gandhi. I wrote this all down here. I feel like this is a nice video, a little bit more than 10 minutes long. We can just leave it here. There are a lot of snake oil salesmen going on here in vegan activism, in ecological activism, and this guy has already been cross-examined. I'll give the link below this video. If you want to know the classic vegan perspective on this group, Gary Francione has already gone after them with his fangs and teeth red, saying that they're anti-vegan, and they kind of are. From their perspective, what they say is they are a quote-unquote broad church. They're supposedly inclusive of meat eaters and hunters and everyone else, and they see themselves as just a short-term protest strategy to quote-unquote save the planet. There's a short-term emergency, and they want everyone to participate in these mass protests. They want tens of thousands of people to get arrested, not just 1,000. They want tens of thousands of people to occupy bridges and highways and airports and shut down cities, and they think that's going to make a difference. And they're peddling an over-the-top doomsday scenario interpretation of the science on climate change, which is dubious, kind of a story for another video, but they present this all-or-nothing Manichaean struggle. Either planet Earth is going to survive or it's not. So who cares if you're vegan? What really matters is whether or not you're willing to sign up for their crazy cult, wear this magic amulet, and accept the leadership of these two people who they refer to as the sun and the moon of their spiritual organization, where you can either respect their leadership or get out and start your own movement, as I played in the clip at the beginning. Yeah, that sounds great. I don't see any problems. Oh, yeah, right. And it's just like direct action everywhere. Oh, yeah, and at the same time, it's completely non-hierarchical. It's completely horizontal and participatory and co-leadership. Yeah, right. Yeah, this doesn't sound like one person is in charge. Two people are in charge at all. Yeah, I've kind of heard this story before, guys. And yeah, all the claims. It's the same rhetoric. It's the same bullshit excuses, down to generalizations about Mohandas Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. and social science research. Man, We live in dangerous times because people want to feel like they're part of the solution, and they are signing up to become part of the problem. People are in between ideologies, they're desperate for answers, and they don't want to live with the gnawing doubt of just carrying with them the questions.
I mean, really, people like to disrespect my crew, but the fact is that you know my name and I don't know you.